Good morning. Do you feel electrified this morning? All right. As I said, my name is Hezborn Mose. I am the president, not the other president, the president of E-Mobility Association of Kenya. I'm also part of the task force from the Ministry of Transport, the E-Mobility Task Force. And what pays my bills is actually a company called Ampersand, where I'm a country director. All right. So the topic for today is accelerating the adoption of e-mobility. And EMAK has done a white paper which we're launching today, and the title of the white paper is Electrifying Kenya's Transport. And that's what I'll highlight throughout the presentation to go through exactly how do we accelerate the growth of e-mobility in the country. So I'll do an introduction of EMAK, I'll do a problem statement, we'll look at the current state, case studies that we looked at, what are we proposing from a fiscal incentive, and then looking at the analysis and benefits from what we are proposing from a fiscal incentive. So EMAK started in March last year, so we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. And from the last 1 year, we can say we've had huge milestones that we can celebrate. Our main objective is actually promoting the growth of e-mobility in the country, focusing on Kenya, collaborating with other countries, legislation, policy, and just growth of e-mobility in the country. What is our problem statement? On the Paris Agreement, we agreed to reduce the carbon emissions by 32%, which equates to 3.46 metric tons. And I think we also highlighted in terms of the other issue that we have is the growing bill on fuel. The importation of fuel in 2021 was 348, in 2022 was 628. And you guys, since you're good forecasters, you can predict what 2023 will be. Obviously, it's going to be higher than that. And since we're in a Kenya Power e-mobility conference, I added a third one. The curtailment on electricity in the country is at 495. And I will highlight how we'll actually help you reduce that curtailment in my presentation. So this is the current state of vehicles in the country. We have 3.66 registered vehicles in the country. We had 1.61 8 years ago. It has more than doubled in the last 8 years. So looking at the future, this will continue going up. The fuel cost will keep on going up. And that's the trajectory based on the history that if everything remains constant, the trajectory will mean that we'll keep on going up in terms of the volume of the vehicles. EV registration. So Mr. MD, these are the details of what we have in terms of EVs in the country. You can see the trajectory from 2018 to 2023. You can see it started from nothing to last year we had 4,047. Key thing is last year we had a fiscal incentive that actually was added in July last year. That helped with acceleration of growth. That shows how incentives will actually help accelerating the growth of EVs in the country. Key thing on these metrics is looking at the categories and the classifications that we are highlighting. One key thing is what you don't have, Mr. MD, on your presentation is bicycles. Bicycles are not registered with NTSA. However, bicycles, if you are living around Westlands, Kilimani area, you've seen bicycles doing deliveries. It's a key pillar to actually help accelerate the growth of EVs. So bicycles are included in our metrics. So showing that last year we had 4,047 EVs registered. Cumulatively, it is more than 6,000 EVs in the country to date. So that's the current state. What are the stakeholders we are working with to help accelerating the growth of EVs? Number one is the government. So we have the government, we have parastatals, we have policy makers, we have regulatory bodies. So we are working with more than 5 ministries. So we have Ministry of Trade, Energy, Treasury, Environment, Health. So looking at how we can collaborate with all of them to kind of help us in terms of implementation of a policy that will help support growth of EVs. Manufacturers and distributors, we are looking at local manufacturing. So localization is a key pillar for us to actually help increase local employment. So we're working with manufacturers locally. Associations, we have AFIMA, EMAK is key, and also International Chamber of Commerce, financing partners. Most of our finance, for example, on motorcycles, 90% of the motorcycles are financed. So finance has become a key pillar in terms of helping us with the growth of EVs. Then development partners, which are GIZ, UNEP, IFC, World Bank, they're all key stakeholders. What are the barriers to adoption? Number one, policy. When you look at the policy today, there is no policy that actually identifies EVs as a vehicle in the country. So number one, looking at the policy, the good thing, the CS for transport, Kipchumba Murkomen, initiated the process of starting a task force, and part of the task force, I am part of the task force, is looking at how we can actually implement a policy to support EVs. Quality and standards, we have a technical team working with KEPS today to ensure that the quality and standards of the EVs are actually standard. Product cost, today the cost of EVs are twice, 3 times as much as ICE, so that's a key barrier. Infrastructure, I'm glad to hear from the MD that KPLC is planning to build infrastructure to help us with the growth. That's key. You can imagine today the EV companies are doing end-to-end. We are building the product, we're building the infrastructure, also we are looking for the customers. So I think if you take one headache from us, it's going to be a huge benefit to us. Capacity and reliability. I think we're in the right place to talk about this. The reliability of our power. You can imagine us, for example, the company I work for, we're doing electric motorcycles. If the power goes down, we're affecting a lot of people. So the reliability and capacity of the electricity is key and a key barrier that needs to be addressed. And then consumer knowledge. We just finished our public participation with the task force, looking at awareness outside Nairobi is completely minimum. So looking at how we can create awareness outside Nairobi. Nairobi, they know it, but when you go outside Nairobi, the people don't know it. Tax incentives, that's kind of what we're proposing, and I'll highlight that on my subsequent slides. So when we were doing our white paper, we looked at 3 countries. We looked at Rwanda, looked at what Rwanda has done, we looked at what South Africa has done, and what Ethiopia has done. And the key common message between the 3 countries, they look at the taxes. They looked at the import tax, excise duties, VAT, and corporate tax. So that's kind of what we also highlighted on our side. And currently, these are the benefits that we have in the country. This is what we proposed as EMAK to the government, and we are all implemented. Looking at bicycles, they got 0 VAT and 0 excise duty. Motorcycles got the same, 0 duty. Buses and lithium-ion batteries. Key category that we added was bicycles. It was nowhere, but now actually they're included in our discussion. And I keep on making it fast so that we remember bicycles are part of EVs. What are we proposing this year? We are proposing different initiatives. We are looking at all categories of EVs. We are looking at bicycles, motorcycles, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, trucks, batteries, and battery as a service. Key highlight on this is our proposal is actually going to 0%. This might seem alarming based on where the country is, but we will actually go into details in terms of how this will benefit eventually. Key thing on this slide is looking at KPLC. We are looking at you taking away the VAT on the KPLC energy power and extending that to the customer by us when we're doing the swap model and leasing batteries to our customers, extending that VAT exemption to our customers. So our methodology that we used, we looked at 3 different scenarios. We looked at high support, medium support, and low support. Currently, what we got last year, we are considering we got the medium support. What we're proposing this year is to taking us to the high support. And that's kind of what I'll highlight through my presentations in terms of when we get the high support, how does that look like? Forecasted growth, this is a key number. When you look at if we were welcome. Thank you. Should I go back or should I continue? No. All right. Yes. You came at the right time, actually, the meat of the presentation. When you look at our proposal, and if we were to get the high support from the government, this is the scenario that it looks like. Key thing is looking at that number in 5 years from now. We are looking at that incentives to be proposed. We are proposing incentives to be for 5 years. We are looking at 800,000 EVs in the market in the next 5 years. And looking at the categories, below that it shows in terms of each category. Motorcycles takes more than 0.5% of that. Bicycles take a huge percentage. Key thing is on buses. Looking at JIT, he'll be talking about it, at 4,000 buses in EV buses. Savings. When you look at fuel, what we looked at is if we were to get to that 800,000 in the next 5 years, how does the fuel look like in terms of savings? 2023 is actual numbers of what we were able to put on the road. So using the cumulative EVs on the road in 2023, if we were to, EVs took the market share from ICE. So if you were to take the same number of EVs and look at the fuel consumption, how much were we able to save last year from just the EVs that actually were on the road? Last year we were able, with the medium support, we were at 4 million is what we were able to save. This is what we predicted. If we use the same analogy, at 2028, we will be at $427 million that we can save by implementing EVs if we get to that 800,000 number. Energy consumption, this is key for directors at KPLC. Looking at the same number, if we were to get to 800,000, we are predicting that we will actually be using 1,045 gigawatt hours of electricity. Is that a clapo? Joy. I think looking at the curtailment in 2023 of 495, we will be able to take away that plus more. Revenue, we are looking at electricity revenue. We looked at the current rates. We are at 16 base. And that shows that the revenue for KPLC will be at 67. That $67 million is just on looking at taxes and levies, not looking at the base. So if you want to look at the base, and when you look at taxes and levies, it's about 50%. So total cumulatively, the country will get close to double, more than double of that 68 million. Emission, talking about carbon credits. This is a key discussion. EV market today has not really focused on carbon credits because of the cost, but we say basically if we were to get a good price on carbon credits, we assume that 40 shillings. You can look at the high support will be at 145,000 tons. That basically will give us $9 million from carbon credits selling. Job creation key, as we look at localization, bringing local employment. These are key numbers. Looking at high support, will be at 172 new employment coming from EVs. Looking at tax revenue from EV, one thing that we considered is basically the losses on taxes, VAT from fuel. So the government will not be getting VAT from fuel. But when you look at the high support losses, but cumulatively, from high support, no VAT at all on this slide. But when you look at the net gain on the next slide, when you look at the losses plus what we are gaining, eventually if we have the 800,000 motorcycles on the road, the net gain is $170 million. Conclusion. As we shift to EVs, there's huge economic and environmental gains. The challenges, we see VAT losses, that's what the government is looking at today, but the net gain is significantly more as we increase the number of EVs on the road. However, we will need legislative support. We are working closely with the government to look at what we are proposing, they can adapt it, and then pretty much working also with the task force to make sure there's a strategy and policy in place to make sure that actually EVs are adopted in the country. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.